Monterey Bay, California, May 3, 2012. A gray whale and her calf are crossing the bay, halfway through a migration that will take them from the lagoons of Baja California to the Arctic. Here the seafloor drops away beneath them. For a few hours they have nowhere shallow to run. 9 killer whales have been with them since morning. The attack takes most of the day. The orcas work in relay, separating the calf from its mother, pushing it under, holding it there. A gray whale has no teeth and no speed. The mother has one defense, which is to put her body between them. And by early afternoon, it isn't enough. The calf is dead. And then the bay begins to fill with humpback whales. 2 had been nearby since the attack started. Now more arrive, from across the bay, from open water, from kilometers away. Within the hour, there are 16. They are not related to the gray whale. Most are not related to each other. The calf is already dead. There is nothing left to save. One humpback moves in directly over the body. Every time a killer whale comes close, it slams its tail into the water and bellows. The confrontation lasts more than 7 hours. The water around that whale is thick with krill. It never feeds. There is an obvious explanation for this, and it is wrong. Killer whales and humpback whales are enemies. Orcas hunt humpback calves, and always have. Look closely at a humpback's tail, and you will often find the evidence. Parallel scars spaced like the teeth that made them, carried for the rest of the animal's life. So a humpback driving off killer whales looks like self-defense. A mother shielding her calf. An animal fighting for its own. That is what everyone assumed. But the calf in Monterey Bay was a gray whale. The humpbacks that came had no calves with them, and they arrived after the killing was already finished. For 60 years, encounters like this were written down and filed away as curiosities. One strange afternoon, seen from one boat in one bay. Nobody had ever put them side by side. When someone finally did, the pattern that came out was not the one anyone was expecting. In 56 of the recorded encounters, researchers could identify exactly what the killer whales had been hunting when the humpbacks arrived. In 11% of them, the target was a humpback. In the other 89%, it was something else. Not a calf, not a relative, not even the same species, and sometimes not a mammal at all. 9 times out of 10, these whales were interrupting a hunt that had nothing to do with them. The study that found this pattern took 62 years to become possible. Not because anyone was working on it for 62 years, because nobody was working on it at all. An encounter like the one in Monterey Bay lasts an afternoon. It happens in open water, usually with no research vessel present, and it is seen by whoever happens to be there. A whale watch operator, a photographer, a biologist studying something else entirely. They write it down, it goes into a logbook or a photo archive or a note that never becomes a paper. And then nothing happens, because a single observer will see this maybe once or twice in a career. From inside one boat on one afternoon, there is no pattern. There is only a strange thing that happened. In 2016, a team led by a marine ecologist at the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration went looking for every one of those afternoons. They pulled published reports, they contacted researchers directly and asked what was sitting in their files. They went through photo identification archives and whale watch records and unpublished field notes. What came back covered 62 years, from 1951 through 2012, and involved at least 54 different observers scattered across the world's oceans. 108 separate encounters, 115 interactions in total. Almost none of it had been collected on purpose. It was 6 decades of people noticing something odd and writing it down, assembled backwards into evidence. And that is why the behavior stayed invisible for so long. Not because it is rare. It turns out to be common enough that dozens of people had seen it. It stayed invisible because no one lives long enough or watches long enough to see it more than a handful of times. It took 54 people, 6 decades, and someone willing to go looking. So what were the killer whales hunting in the 89%? Some of it makes sense. 6 times the target was another humpback, usually a calf. 5 times a gray whale, like the one in Monterey Bay. Those are the cases that fit the old explanation. A humpback defending its own, or something close enough to its own. Then the list keeps going. 14 times the animal being hunted was a California sea lion. 13 times a stellar sea lion. 3 times a harbor seal. Twice a northern elephant seal. These are not whales. They are not relatives. Once a minke whale. Once a Dahl's porpoise. And then the record leaves the hemisphere entirely. In Antarctic waters, twice, humpbacks intervened while killer whales were hunting seals on the ice, a Weddell seal and a crab-eater seal. Different ocean, different humpback population, animals that have never encountered the whales off California and never will. 2 groups at opposite ends of the planet doing the same strange thing. 11 different kinds of animal in total, and one of them is not a mammal. Twice in the recorded encounters, humpback whales interrupted killer whales hunting an ocean sunfish. A fish, 2.5 meters of flat gray slab with no calf, no pod, no voice, and nothing whatsoever in common with a 40-ton whale. Nobody has a good explanation for that one. Which raises a harder question than why they do it. How do they get away with it? A humpback whale has no teeth. It eats krill and small fish, strains them through plates of keratin, and spends most of its life doing nothing more aggressive than swimming slowly with its mouth open. It is not built to fight. It is built to filter. And yet it swims into a pod of the most effective predators in the ocean and comes back out. The answer is hanging off its sides. A humpback's flippers are the largest of any whale, the largest in the ocean, and the largest relative to body size of any animal that has ever lived in it. 5 meters long on a full-grown adult, roughly a third of the entire animal. Each one weighs more than a ton. They are not smooth. The leading edge is lined with hard knobs, and those knobs are colonized by barnacles. Heavy, sharp-shelled things that grow there and stay. When a humpback swings a flipper, it is swinging a 5-meter club with a cutting edge on it. The researchers who assembled these records had a phrase for it. They called it an armed response. Now hold that against the record itself. Across all 115 documented interactions, every confrontation in both hemispheres over 62 years, not one adult humpback was killed. Not one was seriously wounded. Killer whales, the study notes, normally keep to arm's length. This is the part that makes the whole behavior legible. A humpback interrupting a hunt is not being brave. For a healthy adult, there is almost nothing at stake. The animal that could kill it does not exist. And that changes what these whales are. Baleen whales split into 2 categories when a predator arrives. Most run. The rorquals, blue, fin, sei, are fast, and speed is their entire defense. 5 species do the opposite. The right whales, the bowhead, the gray whale, and the humpback. When killer whales come, they turn and face them. Biologists have a name for that split, and it is exactly as blunt as it sounds. Fight or flight. The humpback is a fighter. There is one thing left that the record cannot explain. The humpbacks in Monterey Bay did not happen to be nearby. 2 of them were. The other 14 came from across the bay and beyond it, from open water, from kilometers out, converging on a stretch of ocean where something was already dying. They could not see it. At that distance, in that water, a killer whale attack is invisible. So they heard it. That is the proposal, and it is worth being precise about the word. It is not a finding. It is what the authors think is happening, and they say so plainly. But the circumstantial case is unusually good. Start with the killer whales themselves. When mammal-eating orcas hunt, they go quiet. Their prey can hear them, so they stop talking. They coordinate in near silence and stay silent through the approach and the kill. And then, afterwards, they become loud. Once the animal is dead, there is nothing left to hide from. The pod erupts into calls. It is the single moment in the entire hunt when a killer whale is broadcasting its position across open water, which is exactly when the humpbacks arrive. Second, they are not arriving indiscriminately. Killer whales come in different kinds. Some hunt fish and are no threat to anything with lungs. Where the researchers could identify which type was present, 93% of the time the humpbacks had come for the mammal hunters. They are not responding to killer whales. They are responding to a specific kind of killer whale. Third, and most direct, on 2 occasions, hydrophones were in the water. Both times they recorded killer whales vocalizing at the kill site, and then afterwards, humpbacks arriving. Put it together and you get something stranger than a whale defending its calf. These animals are listening to the ocean, and somewhere in that noise they can pick out the sound of a hunt ending, not the prey, but the predator, and they are willing to swim several kilometers toward it, toward a sound that means something has just been killed. There is a way to test this. Put a speaker in the water and play the sound to a humpback whale. Researchers have done it twice. Off the coast of Norway, teams tagged humpback whales, positioned a boat several hundred meters ahead of them, and broadcast recordings of mammal-eating killer whales. Recordings made in Alaska of orcas attacking and feeding on prey. The sound of a hunt. The humpbacks stopped feeding. They changed their diving, and they turned and swam away from the speaker. 7 of the 8, not one of them, went toward it. So either the record is wrong or something else is going on here. Look at where the experiment happened. In that compilation of 115 encounters, 6 decades, both hemispheres, 54 observers, there is not one record from Norway, not a single case. The behavior this entire film is about has never been observed there, and there is a reason for that. Norway has no whale-eating killer whales. The killer whales in those waters eat herring. They are not predators of humpbacks. They are competitors, and the 2 species feed alongside each other so routinely that mixed groups of humpbacks and killer whales working the same shoal are an ordinary sight. So the researchers played those sounds too, the local ones, the herring eaters, and the humpbacks came toward the speaker, 5 out of 6. They approached and they dived deeper, and they went looking, not for a fight, for food. Same whales, same speaker, 2 recordings. One of them means a meal, and the other means a predator they have never met, which points at something these experiments were not designed to find. In 2002, researchers played killer whale calls to harbor seals off British Columbia. The seals fled from the mammal eaters, the ones that hunt them, but they also fled from fish-eating killer whales from a population 600 kilometers to the north, animals that had never threatened them and never would. The only calls the seals ignored were the local fish eaters, the ones they knew. The seals were not learning which killer whales to fear. They were learning which ones not to. So why do they do it? Whatever the answer is, it now has to be something a whale can learn, Not an instinct every humpback is born with, a practice held by some populations and not others, acquired where killer whales hunt them and absent where they don't. There are 3 explanations on the table. None of them has won. The first is this is not kindness at all. It is deterrence. Killer whales learn too. A pod that repeatedly finds humpbacks arriving to harass them, bellowing, slashing, making a hunt expensive and slow, may simply start avoiding humpbacks altogether. And a humpback that has taught the local killer whales to leave it alone has bought protection for every calf it will ever have. Under this reading, the sea lion is irrelevant. The humpback is not there for the sea lion. It is there to make a point, and the sea lion escapes as a side effect. The second answer is one the researchers themselves lean toward, and it is stranger because it requires the whale to be doing something slightly stupid. Remember what they are responding to, not a sight, a sound. A killer whale pod going loud after a kill, which tells you a hunt has ended, and tells you nothing at all about what was hunted. By the time a humpback knows what is being eaten, it is already there. So the behavior does not need to be selective, it only needs to be cheap. And for an animal that has never been killed by a predator in the entire recorded history of these encounters, it is close to free. A few kilometers of swimming, some noise, no real risk. Run that rule across a lifetime and it pays. Most of the time you interrupt something that has nothing to do with you, but occasionally, 6 times in this record, the animal in the middle of it is a humpback calf, sometimes yours. A rule that says go toward every kill you hear does not need to be smart. It needs to be right often enough, and cheap enough the rest of the time. The rescues on this reading are a byproduct. The whale is not saving a sea lion. It is running a rule that occasionally saves a sea lion. And then there is the third answer, which the researchers do not argue for and do not throw out. Their own words, in the abstract, interspecific altruism, even if unintentional, could not be ruled out. Because the byproduct explanation has a problem, and the problem is that the whale does not leave. If a humpback arrives at a kill, discovers a sea lion, and turns around, the rule works perfectly. That is not what the record shows. They stay. They station themselves over carcasses. They keep tail slashing for hours, long after any confusion about what is being eaten has resolved. The paper puts it flatly. There was no apparent benefit to humpbacks continuing to interfere when other species were being attacked. They arrive by accident. That much is explicable. What nobody can explain is why they stay. That question has been open for a decade. It would not be hard to close. The experiments exist. Nobody has run them. The first is genetic. When 16 humpbacks converge on a killing, take a sample from each one and find out whether they are related. If the whales that show up are family, the rule explanation holds, kin protecting kin, and the sea lions are collateral kindness. If they are strangers, it does not. The second is a sound played in the right place. Find a population of humpbacks that has never been hunted. Play them the voice of the killer whales that live in their own water, animals they know that have never come for them. If they run, then this behavior is not something whales are born knowing. It is something a population learns over generations by being hunted. And if they turn and go toward it, then somewhere underneath all of this there is a whale that does not need to be taught. Nobody has done either experiment, so the record stands as it is. 115 encounters, 62 years, 11 species, and no explanation that covers all of it. There is a detail in the title of that study easy to miss. After the words interspecific altruism, there is a question mark. The people who assembled every one of these accounts, who know this behavior better than anyone alive, ended their own title by declining to answer it. Somewhere off the coast of California, a humpback whale hears something several kilometers away and turns toward it. It arrives to find killer whales and a dying ocean sunfish, a flat gray slab of an animal with no voice, no pod, and nothing in common with the whale that has just crossed open water to reach it. And the whale stays. We do not know why.